Namaste. A wonderful day to all of you. Let's start another important lecture on the lecture series called Indigenous Knowledge System from the Earth for the Future. This is the 32nd lecture of a lecture series. This is Professor Ajit Jaiswal, Head Department of Anthropology. Today we'll discuss about the distinction between indigenous knowledge system and the modern knowledge system. If you remember, in the last class we discussed about modern knowledge system, where we highlighted all the key points related to modern knowledge system, like its scientific inquiry, its specialization and disciplinarity, its institutionalization, peer review and quality assurance, technological advancement, globalization and knowledge exchange, and its applicability. Today we'll try to modify and relate it with the indigenous knowledge system. Remember, the key feature of the indigenous knowledge system is its origin or its cultural context, its epistemological foundation, differences in the method, transmissions, scope, applicability. So there is a cultural and relevance. We'll find there is a series of differences and there are series of overlapping information, where we'll find on one side there is a traditional native knowledge, on the other side there is a modern western side knowledge or globalized knowledge. But these two knowledge, while intermingling, while modifying, there is a transitional knowledge also. We call it as a common ground, where we find series of knowledge. On one side we follow the concept of traditional knowledge system, then at the same time we follow the concept of modern knowledge system also, that too in a very specialized manner. So if you have missed the previous lecture, feel free to see the link given over here. We will have a series of lectures. We already discussed a lot about all this basic background related to the indigenous knowledge system. And if you remember, all these are very important area, very pet topic of most of the competitive examination, especially for UPSC, Public Service Commissions, UGC or net concerns, CSIR net concerns. Wherever we find the concept related to social science, concept related to anthropology, concept related to the public knowledge system concerns, all these areas are very specific in nature. So I would always request all the viewers to analyze all this area in a very systematic and scientific manner, because that will strengthen your way of representing, way of understanding the generalized core issues of indigenous knowledge system, Bharatiya Gyan Parampara, and so on. Let's start the distinction between indigenous and modern knowledge system. The distinction between indigenous and modern knowledge system lies in its origin, lies in its epistemological foundation, lies in its method of knowledge generation, knowledge transmission and application, as well as their cultural context and worldview. Now let's try to break down the key differences between the indigenous knowledge system and the modern knowledge system. Let's discuss one by one the key points. First, origin and cultural context. Indigenous knowledge system originates from the cultural tradition, practices and belief of indigenous community that have been developed over generation within a specific cultural, social and environmental context, whereas the modern knowledge systems emerge from the scientific and intellectual tradition of Western society, influenced by Enlightenment thinking, rationalization and empirical inquiry, often diverge from specific cultural and spiritual context. Next is epistemological foundation. Indigenous knowledge system often characterized by holistic, rational and context specific way of knowing, which emphasize interconnectedness between human nature and the spiritual world. Knowledge is acquired through lived experience, through observation and through oral tradition, whereas in the case of modern knowledge systems, which are grounded in the empirical observation, rational inquiry and scientific method, which prioritize objectivity, quantifiability and reproducibility of finding. Knowledge is acquired through systematic experimentation, analysis and peer-reviewed validations. Another important method to make the distinction between the two is method of knowledge generation. On one side, in the case of indigenous knowledge system, they rely on traditional oral tradition, storytelling, observation, intuitions, and experiential learning as primary method of knowledge generation. Knowledge is often embedded within the cultural practices, rituals, and customary laws, whereas the modern knowledge system utilize systematic observation, experimentations, hypothesis testing, data collection, data analysis, and theoretical modeling as primary method of knowledge generation. Knowledge is disseminated through peer-reviewed publication, conferences, and educational institutions. Another important area to make the distinction is transmission and preservation. In the case of indigenous knowledge systems, they are transmitted orally, intergenerationally within the indigenous communities through storytelling, through apprenticeship, through ceremonies, through cultural practices, and so on. So knowledge is preserved through oral tradition, community elders, and experiential learning. Whereas in the case of modern knowledge systems, the informations are transmitted through formal education system, academic institutions, scientific literature, digital media. Knowledge is preserved through written documentation, peer-reviewed publication, and institutional ceremonies or institutional memories. Similarly, there is another important dimension called scope and domain of knowledge. Indigenous knowledge system encompasses a wide range of domains, including ecological knowledge, traditional medicine, agricultural, cultural practices, spiritual belief, reflecting the holistic view of indigenous people. Whereas the modern knowledge systems span diverse discipline and specialized field of study, including natural sciences, social sciences, engineering, technology, humanities, each within its own method, theories, and area of expertise. Similarly, another important area to make the distinction between the two is application and cultural relevance. Indigenous knowledge systems are deeply rooted in the cultural identity, cultural value, and practice of indigenous communities, often guiding sustainable resource management, community governance, and cultural preservation efforts. Whereas the modern knowledge systems have a wide-ranging application in technology, industry, healthcare, policy making, and global governance, often prioritizing economic growth, theoretical technological innovation, and scientific advancement. So, after discussing the distinction between the two in the six important dimensions, that is origin and cultural context, epistemological foundation, method of knowledge generation, transmission and preservation, scope and domain of knowledge, application and cultural relevance, we can say that overall, while indigenous and modern knowledge systems have a distinct origin, they have a distinct method and cultural context, they both offer valuable insight and perspective for understanding the world and addressing contemporary challenges, recognizing the complementary and diversity of knowledge system, and it is very essential for promoting cultural diversity, sustainability, and social justice in an interconnected world. These are the important points to highlight the distinction between the two. That's all for today. If you have any doubt, any queries related to the present lecture or any of the earlier lecture of a lecture series called Indigenous Knowledge System from the Earth for the Future, then you can ask through the comment section. Remember, this is very important area for you to understand, because this will highlight, this will improve, this will polish your way of representing any as such answer that will be highly useful in order to gain good marks in any of the competitive examination. Important information, a new video will come daily around 1 p.m. So please keep your notification bell on. Thank you so much. Namaste.